Aquarius, last week the sky handed you the most personal full moon of your entire year, landing right in your own sign, forcing the question of how much of yourself you give up in relationships. This week, the sky follows through. On August 6th, the Sun forms an exact trine to Saturn, connecting your partnership house straight to your communication house. Translation: you now have the actual words and the actual nerve to say out loud what that full moon dragged up. Don't waste it. Venus also enters her favorite sign this week, and Chiron stations retrograde to 3 separate storylines, all connected, all pointing at the same underlying question, in a way that almost never lines up this cleanly across a single week. Money and career. Let's talk money first because it's quietly solid this week. Mercury's been sitting in your work and daily routine house, and it's keeping your head clear on practical decisions, budgets, schedules, the boring stuff that actually keeps your life running. Nothing chaotic here. Use the calm while it lasts, because it won't stick around forever, and you'll wish you'd used it once the week's bigger emotional weather actually rolls in. Aquarius tends to get bored of the boring stuff fast, but boring is exactly what pays off this week. A spreadsheet you actually finish, an invoice you actually send, that kind of thing. Mars is also fueling your creativity house right now, which means if you've got a side project, a creative idea, anything that makes you money through actual self-expression instead of just showing up and clocking hours, this is your window. Aquarius loves an original idea. Mars is telling you to stop admiring it and actually launch it. You've probably had this exact idea sitting in your head, half-formed, for longer than you'd like to admit. This week, half-formed isn't good enough anymore. Either launch it or admit you're not actually ready, and stop pretending it's still just a matter of timing. Relationships. Now, here's where the real story is. Relationships. Last week's full moon conjunct Pluto in your own sign, opposing Jupiter in your partnership house, was about as intense as the sky gets specifically for you. It asked, point blank, who are you when you're not shaping yourself around someone else's expectations? This week, Saturn finally hands you the tool to actually answer that question out loud. The Sun trine Saturn on August 6th links your partnership house directly to your communication house. That's not subtle. That's the sky saying, now go say the thing. If last week left you with some uncomfortable clarity about a relationship where you've been bending, where you've been shrinking, where you've quietly gone along with something you didn't actually want, this is the day to name it. Not next week. This week. Saturn doesn't offer these windows often, and it definitely doesn't wait around for you to feel ready. Aquarius can hide behind logic when a conversation gets emotional, turning a real feeling into a detached, well-reasoned argument instead. This week, skip the argument. Just say the actual feeling. And there's more good news layered on top. Venus enters Libra on August 6th, landing in your 9th house of beliefs and travel. This is a genuinely warm, expansive placement. Think deep conversations about the future. A trip that sparks something real, or a connection built on shared philosophy rather than surface-level chemistry. If you're single, this is exactly the kind of week where someone genuinely interesting crosses your path. Not through small talk, but through an actual conversation about something that matters. If you're partnered, use this Venus placement to talk about the bigger picture together, where you're actually headed, not just what's for dinner. Here's the catch, though. An Aquarius needs to hear this part directly. Don't let Venus's ease become an excuse to avoid the harder Saturn conversation. It would be so easy this week to enjoy the good romantic energy and quietly skip the uncomfortable truth-telling Saturn's trine is actually offering you. Resist that. The two aren't in competition. Saturn gives you the courage. Venus gives you the warmth to deliver it without it turning into a fight. Do the hard thing first. Then let Venus handle the aftermath, the reassurance, the warmth. the part where things feel okay again. Trying to do it in the other order almost never works. Energy and health this week pulls you somewhere you might not expect: home. Chiron stations retrograde on August 3rd at 0 degrees Taurus, settling directly into your fourth house of home and family. This is quieter than last week's identity earthquake, but it's connected. An old wound about home, maybe about belonging, maybe about whether you were ever fully understood by your own family, is starting to surface. Aquarius tends to intellectualize this kind of thing fast, turning a real feeling into a clever theory about it within about 30 seconds. Don't do that this week. Let it be uncomfortable without immediately explaining it away. You don't need a diagnosis for the feeling. You just need to actually feel it once without narrating it to yourself while it happens, which is a genuinely different skill than the one you usually practice. Physically, this is a week where your body might carry more than your schedule suggests it should. If you're feeling drained without an obvious reason, it's not random home-related materials surfacing quietly in the background takes more energy than people realize, even when nothing dramatic is actually happening on the surface. Rest with that in mind, not just with your usual mental checklist of, have I done enough today? A quiet evening at home, oddly enough, is exactly what this transit is asking for, not to avoid the feeling, but to actually be present enough for it to say something. Now here's the part that ties everything together, so pay attention. The lunar nodes are still sitting on the Aquarius-Leo axis, with the North Node parked directly in your own sign. That's rare. That's your entire 18-month growth arc pointing straight at your own identity, at becoming exactly who you are without editing yourself down for anyone else's comfort. Last week's full moon was the loud opening scene of that story. This week's Chiron station in your home house is quieter, but it's asking the same question from a different angle: who taught you, at home, a long time ago, that you needed to be different than you actually are in order to belong? That's not a comfortable question. It's not supposed to be. But it's the actual thread running through everything happening to you this week, the partnership conversation. Saturn's handing you the courage for the Venus warmth that could either support real honesty or quietly distract from it, and the old wound about home that's finally getting some light. Notice how none of these are separate stories. They're the same story told 3 different ways in 3 different houses, which almost never lines up this neatly across a single week. So here's your bottom line, Aquarius. Saturn is handing you the words, Venus is handing you the warmth, and Chiron is quietly asking where this all actually started. Don't let a good week become an easy week. Use every piece of it. One more thing worth sitting with. You've built a real reputation for being unbothered, for not needing anyone's approval, for standing slightly apart from the crowd on principle. That's genuinely part of who you are. But this week is asking whether that distance is a choice you're making freely, or a habit you built so long ago that you stopped noticing it was even a choice at all. There's a real difference, and only you know which one is actually true right now. If this hit different, hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, did last week's identity full moon already start showing up for you before I even mentioned it? I want to know how it actually landed, not just whether the theory sounded right.